Again, titled this, What a Wireless Pro Fears About Wi-Fi 6E. And let's get right into it. There's me. Glad to be here. And that's enough about me. So, I'd be curious to find out if I'm alone in my trepidation here. And when I talk about, what a wireless network professional fears about Wi-Fi 6E, that wireless professional is me. So, this is kind of my rumination on the topic. But like I said, I got a feeling I'm not going to be alone in at least some of my thoughts here, but be curious to see what other people think as we proceed. When we get to the end, hopefully there's enough time for discussion, Q&A, etc., and we'll find out. Yeah, Wi-Fi 6E is in fact the cat's arse. We all know that, which is, for clarification, the word fantastic, right? There's absolutely no doubt that what we've gotten given to us from the FCC, that huge amount of spectrum, that is absolutely amazing that we've been given that. That there's no concern with. That is just wonderful. Any spectrum, any new spectrum is good spectrum, regardless of the application in this very busy wireless world. But for Wi-Fi, that particular 6 gig huge container of frequencies that we've been given is great. So it lets us do the wide channels. It leads to, when we say wide channels, we're talking about actual realistic use of, I think it's 7 new 160 megahertz wide channels. Yeah. If I recall right, if my math is right, thanks, Jim. Legitimate real use of things that have only been kind of over marketed, but under deliverable for the past several generations of technology. We're kind of finally there. That's all fantastic. The lower latency, the higher capacity, everything about 6E has the potential to be better. So that there's no disputing, right? It's a wonderful thing. At the same time, dramatic pause, build up the tension. I do have some concerns, and those concerns come from having been in this game for a couple of decades now. Yes, I am a grandpa, so I've been around. Got the gray hairs to prove it. When it comes to any new wireless, particularly wireless, but it's not limited to wireless, when it comes to any new Wi-Fi standard coming out, everything sounds wonderful. The marketing, rightfully so, leads with all the, the hope and promise of, the wonderful new day that we're all, heading towards, with the, wonderful announcements of modulation and new speeds and new this and new that. At the same time, there really is never a free lunch. Nothing comes without a bag of concerns. Your own frame of reference will kind of define how you see 6E when it comes to, okay, beyond the wonderful stuff, what do we have to worry about? We all have our own views on that. I'm well aware of it. I don't profess to speak for anybody other than me when I talk about all of this stuff. And again, at the same time, knowing a lot of the people who are watching this and having talked with people, a lot of people, I'm sure that I'm not alone in at least a lot of how I'm thinking about what's coming our way and how to get there. And as always, that last bullet, if you got a lot of money, you got a lot of staff, it's always easier. Unfortunately, at least from what I'm seeing, that notion of big budgets, there's not a lot of, not a lot of us can claim to have all the money that we would like in the IT budget and the refresh budget. And it's, those budgets are shrinking, and we'll talk about how, not only the budget shrinking, but some other aspects that go with the financial side of something like 6E is kind of concerning. But let me not get ahead. as we delve into that topic of cost, again, this is one of my first and foremost worries as we get into this wonderful new 6E stuff. The first bullet there, I mean, I'm kind of in disbelief, and I know that this is list price and after discounts, you know, anymore buying wireless equipment is like going to a car dealer. It's kind of foolish. You've got the list, and then you negotiate your discount, and you know, the bigger you are or the more you complain, whatever, the better discount you get. But these things are starting off now, the supposed flagship APs, and this is every vendor. I'm not poking any one vendor in the eye. I guess I'm poking the entire industry in the eye. You used to be able to get a 10-pack of pretty decent APs for $3,000, and now, you know, a single flagship 6E, at least the last time I looked, these things tend to be listing over $3,000 each. Even after discounts, I'm sorry, that ends up being, you know, a lot of money in bigger deployments. And you don't just buy hardware anymore. We are in the age of licensing, you know, license the hell out of everything, features and hardware. And I very much think that we've entered into the you got to buy it, then you got to rent what you bought age. And, you know, kind of don't want to stand on that soapbox too much, but it also can't be ignored. There is a lot of cost that's gone into the new wireless systems, and 6E just kind of, you know, again, based on my own experience pricing this stuff out, it's reality. You cannot ignore the fact that, you know, we're not getting commoditized, we're getting more and more expensive when it comes to Wi-Fi. Even though the use is certainly can be considered commoditized, we all just expect it to be there. The hardware is still getting priced, you know, anything but the, you know, the notion of commodity level pricing. You can't get into something like this, at least not responsibly, without getting new test equipment. You know, when I say test equipment, you're surveying tools, your troubleshooting tools, all of that, your handhelds, your software suites for doing, you know, the notion or the likes of site survey and all of that, but also your sensors, your performance testing sensors and performance monitoring stuff. There, when you go back to the amount of spectrum that's available in 6, it's really kind of thought-provoking. How do you even show all of that on a single screen? How do you, especially if it's in your hand, how is this test equipment and sensors and all of that, you know, if you don't have the luxury of a big screen and a dashboard, how is that gonna work? Gonna be interesting, but it's also, you know, comes with its own cost. And again, I don't want to stand on the soapbox too long just whining about the expense of innovation, but this is going to be some expensive innovation from several angles. And then we get into switches. You know, you may need new PoE, you may need new switches, depending on what product set you get for 6E. You know, we're definitely up into the M gig. We should be into the M gig if you're going to believe the marketing about 6E and the incredible throughput you're going to get. We had darn well better be able to make use of our new M gig switches, but unfortunately those come with licenses as well. There is a lot of cost, whether it's the APs, the licenses, or the underpinning LAN. There's just no denying it. So again, I list that as my first concern with 6E. This is really, you know, arguably no one's fault, at least not no one involved in this webinar. You know, this goes way above us, politics and the new world order, and you know, people are basically idiots that have led us to this, you know, desperate situation with the supply chain. It's really astounding, you know, 6 months to a year wait on new stuff, and I'm personally seeing, if you're among a vendor's favorite, you'll get prioritized, which is great if you're among their favorites, and bad if you're just a regular schmuck waiting on new product and all of that. Um, hopefully you can get the hardware when you want it. Even if you have budget, are you going to be able to get it? There's no denying that concern with the new stuff, whether it's 6E or switches or whatever. Just really weird times from the supply chain perspective. With 6E, it would be nice if you could just buy an AP and go do your thing with the AP and leverage everything that is the goodness of 6E. Let's say you found some, you tamed the supply chain beast, you got money. It's still new, arguably cutting edge, depending on the vendor. Everybody wants to differentiate. So the lots of special sauce, lots of features, and it all gets touted as innovation, but at the same time, to me, code bugs and waiting. And again, this comes from decades of dealing with code bugs. It just is what it is. And anymore, you don't just buy, access for your users. You have to buy a big bloated product suite. And even if you don't really want 2/3 of it, that's what you have to buy to be able to get to the parts that you do want often. And that can be kind of crazy. So, I'm just calling it all convolution. It's really hard to get to what you're trying to get to at times if you don't want everything that comes attached to it. These big, huge solutions. And it's like, I just want access. I don't want all these 10 dashboards and this gigantic feature set that you're touting. But you may not have a choice to get into it. And, 6E, it's just the world we're living in. It just is what it is. It happens to be getting worse as 6E comes along, and, we just have to live with it. To me, that last bullet, not the bottom one, but the not enough attention to quality of mandatory features, this is going to be pretty important. People just want to access the network. Any network administrator, any network designer watching this would probably shake their head yes. People sit down, fire up their device. They just want the network to work. They don't care about the differentiation. They don't care about the innovation. They don't care about the guy in the blue suit writing a blog on the company website about, look at how much innovation we've delivered. They just want the network to work. And that's an important point I don't want to lose sight of here. So vendor convolution, another one of my worries when it comes to 6E. As we proceed, given the slides that came before this one, that notion of mixed deployments, even if you're staying with the same vendor, you may have to mix code versions. You may have to mix vendor or AP models. I'm transitioning from one vendor to another, and one of the first things that they lead with is you absolutely don't want to mix vendors' APs within a building if you can help it. You really don't want your first floor to be vendor A and your second one to be vendor B. And none of this is news, but it seems to be accentuated when you have 6E in play, and especially if you have to use the same SSIDs. I mean, the potential to be messy, whatever your version of mixed deployment is out of the permutations that I've listed. And then there's more too. These are just examples. It's going to be rough in spots, and it's going to be unavoidable in spots, given the fact that you can't just order up 1,000 APs and have them all come in and do the changes at the pace that you would want to do your upgrades. And if you're changing from one vendor to another, it's only going to get worse. So absolutely something that the messaging for users and the help desk prep is going to be really, really important when you get into these situations that you can just see the headaches coming. But it's just something we're all going to have to get through. Along with 6E, and when I list these competing technologies, like they're not so much competing for use case potentially. I mean, all of these are not going to be exact, maybe LoRaWAN displaces Wi-Fi for client access. I'm not saying that. When I say competing technologies, it's more so some absolutely will compete, especially if you listen to the marketing. 5G is going to kill Wi-Fi. Good luck. Right. But there's lots of that foolishness out there. But I'm more so talking about the competition comes for your budget dollars and it comes for your staff talent. It's really hard to dilute budgets and people skills down to do all of these things that are out there now to potentially worry about. But as wireless professionals, sometimes we have to, hold our hand up and say, okay, 6E, it's great, right? Lots of good stuff to it. But for this particular situation, it may not be the best. We may have to consider something else as a better solution for what we're trying to do, in a given situation. So this notion of competing technologies has a lot of dimensions to it. And again, it's not, one is necessarily better than the other. It's just you may have to juggle all of them, or at least explain why you're not willing to juggle all of them, or why you are, whatever. I mean, there's just a lot here that I'm boiling down to one slide that, that word juggle is certainly appropriate, whether it be in conversation or actual implementation. And, part of our job as experts is to know how 6E is going to fit in with all of these, or how it's not going to fit in, or how these things are not going to fit in with 6E, and basically guide those conversations. And again, in some cases, actual implementations. As we consider 6E, let me take you to the bottom slide there, or the bottom bullet there, excuse me. Got to remember what we're dealing with, right? 6E is radio stuff. It's 802.11. We still have this situation where, at least to me, in my big environments, there's absolutely this gap between enterprise-ready clients and consumer-style clients, and you still got all these oddball, just take the Chromecast, for example, with its weird casting requirements. None of that changes that I am aware of. You're still going to have this culture out there of these weird client behaviors and weird client requirements. 6E in no way, even though it's got a lot of stuff that is optional in other standards, it brings a lot of mandatory features. It doesn't cure the underlying culture that results in particular client gadgets having weird needs. You still may have to shape the network and break your own policy rules and all of that to make devices fit into your network. 6E is just radio. That's all it is. Still a lot of goofy stuff going into the building of client devices. I don't see that changing. Maybe in some way I'll be proven wrong, and I would love to be, but I really don't see it getting better. And like I said, be really curious to see if anybody's got a better perspective on that challenges my own. So, all of those are absolutely things that concern me when it comes to 6E. But perhaps my biggest fear as we roll forward is way down here at the bottom. What if nobody notices? Right? So users just want reliable access. As I said before, that's going to be important. They want to just come in, fire up their devices, and work. To me, one of the main metrics of whether I've done a good job putting out my wireless networks or not, nobody is doing speed tests. Nobody is checking their data rates. Things just work so well. It's like electricity and water. I don't care what the flow out of the faucet is. I don't care how many gallons per minute my well pump is putting out. I know that whatever that voltage is coming out of the wall works because all my devices work, right? If I've done my job as a wireless implementer and designer right, nobody has to care. But at the same time, or excuse me, before we jump to that, many of us have been able to achieve that already, right? People come in and they use our networks and they just work. But at the same time, we get into this ungodly expensive thing and nobody notices. That's kind of horrible. It's like with all the buildup and all the marketing, and we put this out and people come in with their new 6E devices and it just feels the same. How much can you really get out of an iPad? How much can you really tax the network with an Android phone? Many devices are mobile, and therefore they're limited with their, even though they're impressive with their processing power anymore, they're still mobile devices. And so we're putting out this, whopperdoodle wireless technology, and will people feel the benefits? We'll certainly feel it from the design perspective, but will our clients even know what's going on if we're not making a big deal about it? Yeah, I guess we'll find out. It kind of is what it is. I hate that cliche, but I use it because nothing captures the essence of what needs to be said more so than, it is what it is. But, that very well may be the case, right? We may go to great lengths to put out these super high tech, super high performing, very expensive new 6E deployments, and the people at the end of the string, yeah, so what? Wi-Fi worked yesterday on your old stuff. It works today. Thank you. Moving on. Kind of, acceptance is, you're either going to accept it or you're going to have a lot of problems. In a word, right? So that's the wireless sun. Nothing I've said here is new, if you think about it, really, right? Go back to early 802.11 and go back to, AG, and then 11N, and then AC, and now with AX, and now the big, fancy part of AX and 6 gig. Anything I've put forth here is one of my fears. It's not anything that hasn't been articulated before on earlier standards. Other than the technology itself, the standard itself, the parts of the AX standard that, make a lot of things mandatory versus optional. We kind of, give that notion of backwards compatibility with 6E. We kind of give that a well-deserved punch in the eye with the mandatory stuff. And that's all good. But at the same time, it's not so revolutionary that it really negates very much of what, I've expressed here as a concern with 6E. So in summary, right, the things I'm saying are my fears. It's really just kind of battle scars, and I know that. At the same time, they do have to be called out and talked about. The marketing hype can be so strong that, 6E fixes everything. I don't think so. I think it comes with, concerns, as I've expressed. Nothing is insurmountable. Nothing here is new. We've been through it before in different levels. But to just take it on faith that, this is so freaking wonderful that it's just going to happen, and, suddenly there'll be rainbows and unicorns dancing around. I'm sorry. I've seen this movie too many times to think that that's the way it's going to go. And my question to you as I close, is anyone else feeling the same? Or am I just so old and cynical that, I'm Debbie Downer here? I'd be curious to hear what people think.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, and I definitely share your perspective there. It's not a matter of if Wi-Fi 6E will be buggy and problematic, but how bad will it be? And certainly we know, we have customers that have started deploying it, and I'm sure there's people in the chat that have some experience. So please share your experience with us. To me, I think, there's a lot of opportunity for problems around the AP discovery process and what methods clients decide they're going to use. I'm sure the enterprise APs will, have things ironed out, but there's been enough ambiguity for long enough, a couple years now with this stuff actually being rolled out and sold, that there'll be clients that do things, one way and not the other. And of course, we have to figure out how to support all of them. So, but yeah, if anybody has a comment or a question, please drop it in the Q&A, and we'll get that over to Lee. Couple questions already in the chat, some conversation about 6E outdoor 6E deployments and AFC, and all that's not finished. The FCC and Wi-Fi Alliance and so forth, manufacturers are still working out the AFC systems. But one thing I saw was Cisco released an outdoor Wi-Fi 6E industrial wireless AP in May, with the the promise that it'll get a software update once all the AFC stuff is sorted out, so you can use Wi-Fi 6E outdoors. So that's an indicator that at some point, this is going to be resolved. But any thoughts there, Lee?
Well, we know that the whole AFC thing works, and the automatic frequency control or channelization, whatever the C part of it is. The notion that the AP, based on where it is, kind of signals the all-knowing matrix of channel control and says, I am here. And it gets feedback that, okay, based on what else is near you, don't use these channels, please use this channel. And, the notion of a centralized control of, keeping APs that can potentially step on each other or step on, higher priority systems from doing so, based on some central, FCC controlled, whatever knowledge control plan, whatever you want to call it, this all-knowing thing in the background that all systems are going to report to and interact with. It's actually working in other technologies, right? We know that, some CBRS, there's elements of that in CBRS. There's elements of that in certain wireless bridge products. It can be done. So it is, like you said, just a matter of it will get there. It's not there yet. Sounds really cool. Actually, some white spaces stuff works that way too, as I hear the voices in my head talking at the same time I'm talking, right? So it has been done before, and it stands to reason it'll only get to be more of a common way of doing stuff, and it's great, again, if it works. And a lot of times the devil is in the detail, and how will it be implemented, and how good will it work on the first couple of go rounds. I know, to me, when you talk about Cisco releasing something in May, I'll just be honest. To me, I wouldn't trust it for a couple of years or many code cycles, having been burned by early products, from Cisco in the past. So, depending on your risk tolerance and your sense of adventure, maybe you'd roll it right out and be an early adopter, or maybe you'd let other people feel the pain first. But again, even that is nothing new. That description of how to proceed is really nothing new. We see that all the time with new technology. So we'll get there. It's just how smoothly and how rapidly.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea to take stock of whoever your AP vendor is, and think about what their first generation of Wi-Fi 6 APs were like, and their first generation of 802.11ac APs and 802.11n APs, and were they buggy messes? Were they short-lived? That were, models that were quickly replaced by more stable hardware and software. And if you bought those early APs, you were kind of left holding the bag. That's whatever the pattern of behavior was is probably going to repeat. So keep that in mind. Anonymous question here. And I think we covered this, but is there a compelling reason to upgrade now? Why not delay a couple of years waiting for price and hype to start dying out? Any real big compelling reasons to upgrade now, Lee?
Well, again, everybody has their own story. I know for me and in my large network, we've got life cycle upgrades that if we don't do them now in these particular locations, we may not be able to do them for 5 to 7 years. We have new buildings going up. So what do you put in a new building that you're not going to be able to touch for many years? And some of this depends on how big your networks are, whether you're talking about new space or doing upgrades or whatever. But if the question is, is there any reason to rip out my very good 11AC or non 6E AX stuff, non 6 gig AX stuff, should I rush into that? I would say absolutely not. There is no compelling reason to rush into that. But then again, like I say, if you have the new building or you have something that, do I put in the old? Do I put in the new while I have the money? That may tip you towards 6E. And it has certainly tipped me and my team towards that in spots. And we are, in fact, putting in 6E because we know that we're just not going to be able to revisit these places for X number of years. So we are taking a chance on cutting edge in some locations out of what we feel is kind of necessity, situational necessity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the big driver. I think the only environments that could really, are really just waiting for all the extra capacity already today are those very high density environments, large public venues. But then again, they need to be indoors to use the 6E APs that are available now. And they have to be okay with the internal antenna designs that the APs have, because we're still, till we have those standard power APs that can be installed outdoors with external antennas, that's really a big limiter for those large public venues that are interested in it. So
yeah, and by then, when you talk about the competing technologies too, I know a lot of pro stadiums are moving to not just improved 5G and DAS for 5G, but CBRS style stuff is starting to get more of a footprint. So I think there will actually be some competition there when you talk about large public venues and, is it better to go 5G or do they need 6E? It'll be interesting. And I know that that's a whole different discussion, but, I know that for the cost of doing both, most of us can't, just, or at least not if we're paying for it out of pocket. It's just the dollars that are involved with doing, both are just, there's way too much to fund them both.
Yeah.
Internally.
And maybe one last question here about, and this is interesting. Do you see an opportunity for 6 gigahertz for residential use, maybe for Wi-Fi extenders?
My first thought, when I heard the first half of the question, is absolutely, boy, the the complex apartments. It'd be one of the first things I would do is if you're in a dense apartment building where everybody's got the same, cheese ball AT&T router like my daughter has in her house. Just everybody is just piled on top of each other in the neighborhood. Zero thought gets put into these things when they get deployed by the ISPs that are doing the residential stuff. But in the right situation, 6 gig, if you had the client devices, that's the other part is, you got to have those, but it could be absolutely a game changer for people in dense environments where, 5 gig and 2.4 are just long saturated by the neighbors. So there's that. As for extenders, that's an interesting question. I guess I would have to kind of study the narrative of the 6E theory of operation and all of that. And I don't even know if extenders are going to be allowed. Maybe they are. I don't know. Do you know, Jim?
That's a good question because there are very clear distinctions between classes of APs. We talk a lot about low power indoors and standard power, and also classes of clients, LPI clients, standard power clients, dual clients. So I'm not sure if there's a classification that an extender would fit into and be acceptable with or not. I think right away you could use 6 gigahertz for mesh backhaul in residential environments and take advantage of that, because then your clients don't even need to support 6 gigahertz. It could just be what the mesh points use. And we've seen those systems already on the market, although they're quite expensive. Back to Lee's very first point, seems to be the case in the consumer market too, that 6 gigahertz gear is expensive. But absolutely in dense residential environments where the DFS channels tend not to be available on the hardware that's in use, and everybody's using 80 megahertz channels, 5 gigahertz can be really ugly, and getting to 6 gigahertz could be a big performance improvement in a lot of residential places. So
it's a great point about the mesh backhaul on 6 too. I wasn't even thinking about that. That's a absolutely wonderful point.
Yep. Great. Well, thanks, Lee. And I think Heather, with that, we can transition.
You do. Well, if you have any follow-up questions, you'll get an email in your inbox tomorrow. Go ahead and respond to that, and we'll make sure we get any other questions you may have answered. All right. Well, without further ado, it's Eric's time to shine. We are moving into 7 minutes with 7 signals. So Eric, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Awesome. My pleasure to be here, guys. Lee, thanks so much. So for today's 7 minutes of 7 signal, I'm going to take you on a little trip into the 7 signal lab and share with you some of the things that we're seeing. So let's take a look together, shall we? So from a Wi-Fi 6E standpoint, yeah, just like what Lee was talking about, this is new, this is different. And so, you don't know what to expect. We don't know what to expect, but we want to be your partner in all of that. Okay, so if you look at this device that we have in our lab, this is Samsung, the laptop, and you can see it's got the Wi-Fi 6E, the Intel AX210 adapter. And guys, we're starting to see these things in the marketplace. They're out there, they're selling them. And so along with selling these client devices, you're now going to start to get questions about how, it's supposed to be able to do this or supposed to be able to do that. And so we need to be able to start testing it. And that's what we use Mobileye for. We put Mobileye on the device to see how the device behaves when given options with regards to 6 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz. All right, so let's take a close look. Now, we don't have everything all fleshed out yet, of course, but I did want to show you something really interesting. So check this out, guys. Signal strength, minus 46, it's pretty close. Channel 223. All right, I found that to be very interesting because when I looked at my chart, I didn't see a 223 yet. That's what the operating system is reporting. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw like a 225. I think I saw a 233, but I didn't see a 223. So I'm not sure if there's any explanation of that. Nevertheless, trying to report the 6 gigahertz channel. And as you can see, what we've done is we've purchased one of these new Linksys 6E routers that we have in our lab. Okay, so nothing commercial yet. It is, residential. Nevertheless, we know that people out there are starting to want to try this stuff out. How would they know how well it's working or not? Well, that's what we have 7 Signal for. Now, one of the things that was happening with this device, guys, Mr. Sammy Samsung laptop here, what was happening is that we noticed that he was roaming back to the corporate network. Okay, he was roaming, and not only that, but he was roaming over to the 5 gigahertz Linksys network that was also set up. And so my next question was, why is it doing that? This is really messing up my little experiment if it keeps roaming off of 6 gigahertz. So what did I do? Well, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know, but every few minutes, 7 Signal is getting the scan data from the laptop computer. This is basically a printout of everything that this laptop computer can hear all around it. And you can download this data by clicking on the CSV button right here and take a closer look. So I did that for us, and I want to share that with you right now. So after applying a few filters, you can see what we've got going on here. So this is our 6E wireless router. And obviously this is the 6 gigahertz band that it's connected to, channel 223 at a -46. And like I said a moment ago, we were having issues with it roaming back over to 5 gigahertz. Why? Well, it's at -41. That was actually a little bit shocking to me to see this 5 dB difference. And then we have our corporate network at -59. This leads us to the question. If I've got 6 gigahertz clients and I've got 6 gigahertz access points, are they even going to use it? And I guess that's going to come down to software and drivers and how they decide to evaluate the situation and determine if I want to be on the 6 gigahertz network on the channel that's nice and clean, or do I want to stay on the 5 gigahertz network? It's kind of like having that, security blanket. That's where I'm comfy. That's what I know. That's what I like. We don't know what's going to happen. It's the device's choice. But with data like this, we can keep an eye on what the behavior is so that we can make adjustments accordingly. So there you have it, guys. It's a brave new world out there, and we need information in order to make decisions. And there you have it. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope you have a great day. Remember, you and me, we can't see or hear Wi-Fi, but 7 Signal can. Thanks for joining us today, everybody, and take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, Lee, again for joining us. Thanks to Jim. And of course, thanks to all of you for being here. We'll be back again, same time, same place. So we will see you there. Bye-bye.
Thank you.